The sleek black Tesla pulled up to the magnificent entrance of the Grand Plaza Hotel, its polished marble columns reaching toward the Manhattan sky. Behind the wheel sat one of America's most innovative tech entrepreneurs, though you wouldn't know it from her humble demeanor. She checked her watch, still 20 minutes early for the meeting that could reshape the future of artificial intelligence in healthcare. Running her hands over her crisp navy blazer, she took a deep breath. After closing a dozen billion-dollar deals, she still felt those little butterflies before big meetings. But that's what kept her sharp, kept her hungry. The doorman barely glanced her way as she walked past, despite her designer briefcase and perfectly tailored suit. She'd grown used to it over the years. The subtle ways people's eyes would slide past her, the assumptions they'd make about who she was and wasn't. The grand lobby stretched before her like something out of a classic film, all crystal chandeliers and gleaming marble floors. The click of her heels echoed as she approached the front desk, reservation confirmation ready on her phone. The manager's face shifted almost imperceptibly as she drew closer, that familiar micro-expression she'd seen countless times before. "Good morning," she said warmly, sliding her platinum card across the counter. "I have a reservation for the next 3 nights. I'm here for the Healthcare Innovation Summit." The manager's fingers hovered over his keyboard, his eyes never quite meeting hers. "Your name?" She provided it, watching as he made a show of typing and frowning at his screen. Behind him, 2 other staff members whispered and exchanged glances. She caught fragments of their conversation. "Does she know how much rooms cost here? And probably at the wrong hotel." "I'm terribly sorry," the manager said, though his tone carried no real apology. "I'm not seeing any reservation under that name. Are you certain you booked at the Grand Plaza? There's a Holiday Inn just a few blocks." She pulled up the confirmation email, complete with reservation number, and turned her phone toward him. "Right here. Confirmed 3 weeks ago. Presidential suite. 3 nights." The manager's lips thinned. He typed something else, shook his head. "I do apologize, but it seems we're experiencing some technical difficulties with our system. And unfortunately, we're completely booked for the conference." Just then, a couple walked up to the desk next to her. The manager's colleague greeted them enthusiastically. "Welcome to the Grand Plaza. Checking in. Wonderful. We have several lovely suites available." She stood there, platinum card still on the counter, watching this scene unfold. Years of experience had taught her to maintain her composure, to think 3 moves ahead. She built her empire by turning moments like these into opportunities. Without a word, she recorded the interaction on her phone, carefully documenting every detail. "I'll need to speak with your general manager," she said calmly. "I'm afraid he's unavailable." The manager replied quickly. "And as I've explained, we simply don't have any rooms. Perhaps you could try another hotel. I'd be happy to provide some recommendations more suitable to your needs." She picked up her platinum card, tucking it back into her wallet along with something far more valuable: motivation. She'd learned long ago that the best response to discrimination wasn't anger, but action. And as she walked out of that lobby, her mind was already formulating a plan that would transform not just this hotel, but the entire hospitality industry. Little did they know, that moment of rejection would lead to one of the most remarkable ownership transitions in luxury hotel history. But for now, she simply smiled, knowing that sometimes the sweetest success comes from those who underestimate you. She had a meeting to get to, after all, and a few calls to make to her investment team. The rain had started falling by the time she made it back to her car, but it matched her mood perfectly. She sat behind the wheel for a moment, letting the luxury leather seats comfort her as she processed what had just happened. Her phone buzzed, another reminder about the upcoming meeting. She'd have to find a solution fast. Opening her contacts, she called her assistant. "Hey, I need you to book me into another hotel near the convention center. Seems the Grand Plaza is having some technical difficulties." She kept her voice steady, professional, but her assistant of 8 years caught the undertone immediately. "Did it happen again?" her assistant asked quietly. It did. But you know what? I think it's time we did something about it. She pulled out her tablet and started making notes while speaking. While you're booking the new hotel, can you pull up everything we have on the Grand Plaza's parent company? Ownership structure, financial reports, recent news, everything. The memory of those whispered comments, those dismissive looks, fueled her focus. She'd built her tech company from nothing, turning a small software startup into a billion-dollar empire that revolutionized medical diagnostics. Along the way, she'd faced countless doors slammed in her face, but each one had only made her more determined. Her new hotel room, though less prestigious than the Grand Plaza's presidential suite, offered a perfect view of her would-be accommodation. As she set up her impromptu office, her team began sending through the information she'd requested. The picture it painted was fascinating. The Grand Plaza wasn't just any luxury hotel. It was part of Heritage Hotels International, a once mighty chain that was now struggling to keep up with modern hospitality groups. Their stock had been sliding for the past 3 years, and rumors of a potential sale were circulating in business circles. She spent the afternoon alternating between preparing for her healthcare summit presentation and diving deep into Heritage Hotels' financials. By evening, she'd constructed a clear picture, a proud old company resistant to change, losing market share to more innovative competitors, and desperately in need of fresh leadership. During a break from her research, she ordered room service and walked to the window. The Grand Plaza's magnificent facade glowed in the evening light, its windows illuminated like rows of stars. She thought about all the people who'd been turned away from those doors over the years, all the talent and potential dismissed based on appearance alone. Her phone rang. It was her investment advisor. "You were right," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "Heritage Hotels is quietly looking for buyers. They're trying to keep it under wraps to avoid spooking the market, but they're definitely in trouble." She smiled, watching the flow of people in and out of the Grand Plaza's golden doors. "Send me everything you can get on their current ownership structure and any outstanding debts. I want to know every possible angle." "Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" Her advisor's voice held a mix of concern and excitement. "That depends," she replied, her reflection in the window smiling back at her. "Are you thinking it's time we expanded our portfolio into the hospitality industry?" She spent the rest of the evening developing her strategy. This wouldn't be just about revenge. She'd seen too many people destroy themselves pursuing that path. No, this would be about transformation, about creating change from the inside out, about building something better. As night fell over Manhattan, she reviewed the notes she'd made throughout the day. The humiliation of the morning had crystallized into something powerful, a vision of what the Grand Plaza could become. Not just a luxury hotel, but a symbol of true hospitality, where everyone would be welcomed based on the content of their character and the validity of their reservation. Nothing more, nothing less. Tomorrow, she'd rock the healthcare summit with her presentation on AI-driven diagnostic tools. But after that, she'd begin the careful, strategic process of acquiring the very establishment that had turned her away. Sometimes, she reflected, the best response to prejudice isn't to tear things down, but to build them up better than before. Long before she became a billionaire, she was just a curious kid sitting at her family's kitchen table in Detroit, watching her mom balance the household checkbook. Her father worked 2 jobs, teaching during the day and coding at night. It was from him that she first learned about computers, spending weekends tinkering with old machines he'd bring home to fix. Their neighborhood wasn't fancy, but it was full of dreamers. The local library became her second home, where she'd spend hours reading about technology and business. The librarian would smile, watching this determined young girl check out books meant for college students. "You're going to change the world someday," she'd say, and for the first time, someone besides her parents believed it too. High school brought its own challenges. She was often the only girl in advanced computer science classes, and usually the only black student too. But she found strength in those moments of isolation, channeling her energy into learning everything she could about programming and artificial intelligence. Her breakthrough came during her second year of college. Working late one night in the computer lab, she discovered a new way to use AI for medical imaging. It started as a simple project, trying to help doctors spot early signs of disease more accurately. She had no idea then that this would become the foundation of her future empire. But the road wasn't easy. She remembered her first attempt to get funding, walking into a room full of investors in Silicon Valley. They smiled politely, asked if she was someone's assistant. When she started her presentation, half the room was checking their phones. One investor actually fell asleep. "Your idea is interesting," they'd say, "but maybe you need someone more experienced to lead the company." She knew what they meant. Someone who looked different. Someone who fit their image of a tech CEO. Instead of giving up, she worked harder. During the day, she took consulting jobs to pay the bills. At night, she refined her AI algorithms, making them faster, more accurate, more powerful. She lived on coffee and determination, sleeping on a futon in her tiny apartment to save money for server costs. Her first real client was a small clinic in her old neighborhood. They couldn't afford the expensive imaging systems from big companies, so they took a chance on her. When her AI system helped catch 3 early-stage cancers in the first month, word started to spread. More clinics signed up, then hospitals, then major medical centers. Every success brought new challenges: scaling the technology, building a team, dealing with regulations. But she met each obstacle with the same quiet determination she'd learned at that kitchen table in Detroit. The money came later. First million, then billion. She remembered the day her company went public, standing on Wall Street, watching the numbers climb. But she was more proud of the lives her technology had saved, the doctors it had helped, the families who got good news instead of bad because her system caught problems early. Now, sitting in her office reviewing the hotel purchase documents, she thought about that journey, about all the doors that had closed, all the rooms she hadn't been welcome in. Each rejection had taught her something valuable, about business, about people, about herself. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mom. "Proud of you, baby. Show them what real class looks like." Her mom always knew, somehow, when she was taking on a new challenge. That's where she'd learned it from. That mix of grace and steel, of changing things from the inside out. Tomorrow, she would walk into the Grand Plaza as its owner. But tonight, she looked through old photos on her phone. That little girl at the library, the college student in the computer lab, the young entrepreneur with big dreams. Each version of herself had contributed to this moment. She smiled, thinking about how life had come full circle. That same determination that helped her succeed in tech would now help her transform an industry stuck in the past. Sometimes the best teacher is experience, and she had plenty of that to share. The morning of the final acquisition meeting started like any other big business day, with a perfectly pressed suit and a cup of strong coffee. She stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her collar, thinking about how this moment was bigger than just buying the hotel. It was about changing an entire system from within. Her phone lit up with messages from her team. Everything was in place. The lawyers had triple-checked every document. The money was ready to transfer. The shell companies they'd created had successfully hidden her identity through the entire negotiation process. Not a single person at Heritage Hotels knew who was really buying their company. She arrived at the law firm's office 30 minutes early, just as she always did for important meetings. The conference room had that typical big business feel, all glass, chrome, and expensive wood. Around the table sat Heritage Hotels board members, their faces showing a mix of relief and resignation. They thought they were selling to a faceless investment group. They had no idea. "All the paperwork is in order," her lawyer announced, sliding documents across the table. "Once these are signed, ownership of Heritage Hotels International, including all properties and assets, will transfer to our client." The board chairman picked up his pen, then paused. "We still haven't met your client. Surely for a transaction of this size." She stood up slowly, straightening her jacket. The room fell silent. "Actually, you have met me. At least your staff at the Grand Plaza has. She watched recognition slowly dawn on their faces. I was the guest you turned away last month. The one your manager said couldn't possibly have a reservation. The chairman's pen clattered to the table. Another board member started coughing. She continued, her voice calm and professional. Heritage Hotels has a long and proud history, but it also has a history of excluding people who don't fit a certain image. Today, that changes. Pull out her own pen, she began signing the documents. I've reviewed your company's practices, policies, and complaints. I've seen how many talented people you've turned away, both as guests and as employees. That stops now. The board members watched in stunned silence as she moved through the paperwork, her signature transforming their company with each stroke. One of them finally found his voice. But you're a billionaire. She finished for him. Yes. A tech CEO. Yes. Someone your hotel staff judged by appearance rather than substance. Also yes. And now, your new owner. The final document was signed. Her lawyer began the funds transfer. In the space of 15 minutes, one of the oldest luxury hotel chains in America had changed hands. But more importantly, it was about to change direction. She stood, gathering her things. Your jobs are safe, for now. But starting tomorrow, we begin a complete overhaul of how this company operates. I expect to see all of you at 9 a.m. sharp at the Grand Plaza. We're going to learn some valuable lessons about hospitality. Walking out of that conference room, she felt the weight of what she'd just accomplished. This wasn't just a business acquisition. It was a chance to prove that luxury and inclusivity could go hand in hand. That excellence didn't have to mean exclusion. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. Remember what I always told you. Success is the best answer to those who doubt you. Looking out the window of her car at the Manhattan skyline, she smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. She'd have to face that same hotel manager, those same staff members. But this time, she wasn't walking in asking for a room. She was walking in to create real, lasting change. Sometimes life has a way of coming full circle, she thought. And sometimes the best response to discrimination isn't to fight it from the outside, but to transform it from within. The Grand Plaza was about to learn what true hospitality meant, and she was just the person to teach them. The week after the acquisition was a whirlwind of activity. She spent hours in her temporary office, set up in what used to be the Grand Plaza's storage room. From this unlikely command center, she began the careful work of understanding every aspect of how the hotel really operated. Her first discovery came from the employee files. Hidden beneath years of paperwork, she found dozens of complaints about unfair treatment. Talented staff members passed over for promotion. Qualified applicants rejected for questionable reasons. It was all there in black and white, a paper trail of prejudice. Look at this, she said to her HR director, pointing at a stack of resumes. All these people were rejected despite having perfect qualifications. And notice the pattern. The rejected candidates all had one thing in common. They didn't fit the hotel's unspoken image. She walked the hotel halls at different hours, watching how things really worked. During the quiet night shift, she chatted with the cleaning staff, learning about their dreams and struggles. Many had been working there for years without a single promotion. One woman had a master's degree in hospitality management, but was still pushing a cleaning cart. The front desk operations revealed even more. She reviewed security footage from the past month, counting how many times potential guests were turned away with that same excuse about technical difficulties with reservations. The pattern was clear and troubling. We need to completely rebuild our training program, she told her team during a late-night strategy session. Not just superficial changes. We're going to address the root of the problem. She brought in experts in diversity and inclusion, but not for the usual one-day workshops that everyone forgets about by next week. This would be different. She planned a comprehensive program that would become part of the hotel's daily operations. The old guard of management wasn't happy. She overheard their whispered conversations in the break room, their doubts about her leadership. But she hadn't built a billion-dollar tech company by worrying about what others thought of her. One evening, while reviewing customer feedback forms, she found a letter that stopped her in her tracks. It was from a family who had been turned away 6 months ago. "We saved for years to stay at your hotel," they wrote. "Our children were so excited, but your staff made us feel like we didn't belong." That letter became her motivation. She pinned it to her office wall, a reminder of why this transformation was so necessary. This wasn't just about changing policies. It was about changing lives. Her team worked around the clock, creating new guest service protocols. Every interaction would be recorded and reviewed. Every complaint would be taken seriously. And most importantly, every guest would be treated with the same level of respect, regardless of their appearance or background. She also discovered something unexpected. Many of the staff wanted change. During one-on-one meetings, younger employees especially shared their frustration with the old way of doing things. They were eager for a fresh start, a chance to create something better. The security team was retrained to focus on actual threats, not perceived ones based on prejudice. The housekeeping staff received new uniforms, better equipment, and clear paths to advancement. The front desk team began intensive customer service training, with emphasis on recognizing and eliminating bias. Late one night, as she walked through the quiet lobby, she imagined what the Grand Plaza could become. Not just a luxury hotel, but a model for what true hospitality should look like. A place where everyone, guests and employees alike, could feel valued and respected. Tomorrow would be the big day. The day she officially introduced herself to the staff as their new owner. She had their personnel files memorized, their stories understood. She knew who needed encouragement, who needed opportunity, and yes, who needed to change or find employment elsewhere. Sometimes, she thought, the biggest changes start in the smallest ways, with one person saying enough, with one decision to turn discrimination into opportunity, with one vision of how things could be better. The morning of the big reveal started quietly enough. She parked her car in the same spot where she'd been turned away just weeks ago. The early morning sun glinted off the Grand Plaza's windows, making them shine like gold. The same doorman was on duty, and just like before, his eyes slid past her, as if she were invisible. This time, though, she wasn't alone. Behind her came her executive team, a diverse group of professionals she'd handpicked over the years. They walked through the grand entrance together, their footsteps echoing across the marble floor. The front desk manager, the same one who had turned her away, was there, speaking to another guest. When he saw her approaching, that familiar look of dismissal crossed his face. He finished with his current guest, slowly making her wait, probably expecting her to cause a scene about her previous treatment. "I'm sorry," he said without looking up, his voice dripping with fake politeness. "But as I explained before, we're fully booked and—" "Actually," she interrupted calmly, "I'm not here for a room." She paused, watching as the regional director hurried across the lobby toward them. "Right on schedule." The regional director looked nervous, his tie slightly crooked. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet your new owner and CEO." He gestured toward her, and the look on the manager's face was priceless, a mix of shock, disbelief, and dawning horror. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent lobby. "I believe we've met before. Though last time, you seemed to have some technical difficulties with my reservation." The color drained from the manager's face. Behind him, other staff members who had witnessed her rejection weeks ago stood frozen. One actually dropped the papers she was holding. But instead of firing them on the spot, which everyone clearly expected, she smiled. "I'd like everyone to gather in the main ballroom in 15 minutes. Every employee from every department. We're about to have our first staff meeting under new management." As the word spread through the hotel, she watched the different reactions. Some looked terrified, others hopeful. The cleaning staff whispered among themselves, while senior managers made frantic phone calls. In the ballroom, she stood at the podium, looking out at over 200 employees. The front desk manager sat in the front row, probably wishing he could disappear. She took a deep breath and began. A month ago, I walked into this hotel as a guest and was judged not by my reservation, not by my platinum card, but by my appearance. Today, I stand before you as your new owner. But this isn't a story about revenge. She clicked to the first slide of her presentation, showing the hotel's current statistics. This is about transformation, about making the Grand Plaza live up to its true potential, about showing the world that luxury isn't about exclusion, it's about excellence. The next hour was a masterclass in leadership. She outlined her plans for the hotel, new training programs, promotion opportunities, improved working conditions. She showed them customer feedback, both good and bad. She shared her vision of what the Grand Plaza could become. Some of you are probably wondering if you'll still have a job, she said, noting how several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The answer is yes, if you're willing to learn and grow. This isn't about punishment, it's about progress. She looked directly at the front desk manager. Sometimes our biggest mistakes can lead to our greatest opportunities for growth. I'm offering everyone in this room that opportunity. The question is, are you ready to take it? The silence in the room was heavy with possibility. Then, from the back, someone started clapping. Others joined in, slowly at first, then building to a thunderous applause. She saw tears in some eyes, smiles on faces that had been frozen in fear moments before. This was just the beginning, she knew. Real change wouldn't happen overnight. But as she looked out at her new team, she saw something powerful: hope. Sometimes the best way to fight discrimination isn't with anger, but with opportunity. Not with revenge, but with redemption. The real work began the day after the big announcement. She arrived at the hotel before sunrise, ready to start implementing changes. The front desk manager was already there, looking nervous but determined. She had seen something in his eyes during yesterday's meeting, a glimmer of understanding, maybe even regret. "I'd like to start with you," she told him quietly. "Because if you can change, anyone can." She pulled out a thick folder of complaint letters. "I want you to read every single one of these. These are the people we turned away, the experiences we denied them, the memories they couldn't make here." For 3 hours, he read. She watched as his expression changed with each letter. By the end, his hands were shaking slightly. I never thought about it this way," he said. "I just followed what I was taught." "Exactly," she replied. "And now you're going to help teach something different." She shared her plan. He would become the hotel's first director of guest experience and inclusion. Who better to spot discrimination than someone who once practiced it? The changes rolled out steadily over the next few weeks. The old uniforms, designed to hide the cleaning staff, were replaced with professional, dignified attire. The break room, once cramped and dark, was renovated into a comfortable space where all employees could rest and eat together. She introduced a blind hiring system, where initial applications were reviewed without names or photos. Suddenly, the hotel's hiring pool became much more diverse. The woman with the master's degree who had been pushing a cleaning cart. She was now assistant manager of housekeeping, with a clear path to further advancement. Training sessions weren't just boring presentations, they were real conversations. She brought in guests who had been turned away to share their stories. The staff listened, really listened, as people described how it felt to be judged, dismissed, excluded. The front desk manager, in his new role, threw himself into the work of transformation. He developed a training program based on his own journey from bias to understanding. "I was wrong," he would tell new employees, "and here's how I learned to be better." One day, a young girl walked into the lobby with her parents. The family looked tired, dusty from traveling. In the past, they might have been directed to another hotel. Instead, they were welcomed warmly, offered fresh water, treated like the valued guests they were. Later, she overheard the girl tell her mother, "I want to work in a hotel like this someday." She smiled, remembering her own childhood dreams. That's how change happens, one small moment at a time. The housekeeping staff now had tablets to report maintenance issues directly. The security team focused on actual suspicious behavior, not appearances. Every employee had a clear path for advancement, based on merit and effort rather than background or connections. Some of the old guard resigned, uncomfortable with the new way of doing things. She wished them well and hired eager replacements who shared her vision. The hotel's atmosphere began to change. You could feel it in the way people carried themselves, the way they interacted with guests and each other. One evening, she found the front desk manager training a new employee. "Remember," he was saying, "every guest who walks through that door has a story. Our job is to make sure that story includes being welcomed here." She stood in the lobby, watching the steady flow of guests. All kinds of people, all treated with the same respect, the same genuine welcome. The Grand Plaza was becoming what it should have been all along, a place where luxury meant not just elegant surroundings, but true hospitality. A young bellhop approached her, tablet in hand. "Ma'am, I have an idea for improving our guest check-in process." She smiled, gesturing for him to continue. This was what she'd hoped for. Employees at every level feeling empowered to make things better. Real change, she realized, wasn't just about new policies or procedures. It was about changing hearts and minds, one person at a time. It was about creating a place where everyone, guest or employee, could feel valued, respected, and welcomed. 1 year later, the Grand Plaza had transformed into something extraordinary. The lobby buzzed with energy as guests from all walks of life moved through its elegant spaces. The same crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, but now they shone on a different kind of luxury, one that welcomed everyone. She sat in her office, reviewing the year's numbers. The hotel's revenue had actually increased by 40% since the changes began. It turned out that true hospitality was good for business. The Grand Plaza had become famous for something new, being the most welcoming luxury hotel in Manhattan. The front desk manager, now the director of guest experience, knocked on her door. "You need to see this," he said, holding up a letter. It was from a family who had stayed at the hotel last week. Their young daughter had lost her favorite stuffed animal, and the housekeeping staff had not only found it, but wrapped it in a beautiful box with a note saying it had enjoyed its extra vacation at the Grand Plaza. "This is what hospitality looks like," she said, smiling. "It's the little things that matter most." Business schools had started using the Grand Plaza as a case study in corporate transformation. She often gave talks about how changing company culture could drive success, but her favorite moments were the quiet ones, watching her vision of true luxury hospitality come to life. The cleaning staff now wore professional uniforms with their names and titles displayed proudly. Many had been promoted to management positions, bringing fresh perspectives to how the hotel operated. The woman with a master's degree, she was now the head of operations, implementing innovative ideas that improved both guest experience and employee satisfaction. Training sessions had evolved into something special. New employees didn't just learn about policies. They learned about empathy, understanding, and a real meaning of service. The front desk manager's story of transformation had become a powerful teaching tool, showing that anyone could change if given the chance. One morning, she overheard a conversation between two guests in the elevator. "I stayed in luxury hotels all over the world," one said, "but there's something different about this place. It feels genuine." The hotel's success had sparked changes throughout the industry. Other luxury hotels started copying their training programs, their hiring practices, their approach to guest services. She smiled, remembering how it all started with a rejection that turned into an opportunity. The old complaint letters still hung in the training room, but now they were surrounded by new letters. Thank you notes from guests who had found a home away from home at the Grand Plaza. Stories of birthdays celebrated, proposals made, dreams achieved within these walls. She walked through the lobby, watching the daily dance of guests and staff. The doorman greeted everyone with the same warm smile. The front desk team made eye contact with each guest, making them feel truly seen and welcomed. The bellhops moved with purpose, proud of their role in creating memorable experiences. A small girl tugged at her sleeve. "Are you the owner?" she asked. "My mom says you made this place special." She knelt down to the child's level. "Actually, everyone who works here makes it special. We're like a big family, and every guest who walks through those doors becomes part of that family." Later that evening, she stood at her office window, looking out at the city lights. The Grand Plaza had become more than just a hotel. It had become a symbol of what was possible when you chose transformation over tradition, inclusion over exclusion. On her desk sat a new acquisition proposal. Other hotel chains had noticed their success, and now they wanted her to work her magic on their properties. She smiled, thinking about how one moment of discrimination had led to a movement of change. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest moments. Sometimes being turned away from one door leads you to build a better doorway for others. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's showing the world a better way forward.